All right, welcome everyone to episode 42 of APS Radio. My name is Jim Bernica, and I'm joined today by Rick Cheatham. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you too. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on this. This has been we've been working on this for probably about a month now, I'd say, give or take. And so finally having you here, this is going to be great. I'm excited. So um, I want to kind of give a monologue, and I know I don't typically do this. I usually just jump right into the show, but I feel it's important to give some background about how this even came to be. So, our mutual friend James Gearing from Behind the Shield reached out to me, and he said, "I think I have a guest that would be good for you." And he gave me the lowdown. He said this individual has dealt with addiction. He dealt with his son's murder, and he was also paralyzed. And my response was, "This is one guy? Like this doesn't seem like one guy. This seems like three separate people." But he said one guy, retired Anaheim captain. Um, I was all in, and we started talking, and I ended up listening to you guys' episode on Behind the Shield. And James is, if you haven't listened to Behind the Shield podcast, it's a great podcast. James really does a deep dive with things. And I differ from him. I really just try to focus on one or two things. So after listening to your guys' show, I really thought that the main thing to focus on was forgiveness. And I remember I reached out to you and I told you like, hey, I think that our show should focus on forgiveness. And it was just like it was almost like a sign. Is that right?
That's exactly right. You were saying that you had contacted me and said, "Hey, I think I got an idea for what this could be on." And you said forgiveness. And I said, "That's interesting that you said that because I'm going through my entire monologue of what this all represents, and I've come down to just this is about forgiveness." So you and I were on the exact same page. It was a confirmation for sure.
Yeah. And so I want to take a second and ask, I really want all my listeners and viewers out there, I want you to be able to reflect. We're going to go into this story here in a minute. And if you're holding on to, not forgiving somebody or somebody's not forgiving you, and it's just tearing you apart, you have anger, you have bitterness, like if it's just holding you back, carrying all this stuff that's just so necessary, I really want you to listen to Rick's story, and I want you to reevaluate yourself and question, like, are you really willing to forgive others or ask for forgiveness just so you can drop off all that baggage and be able to move on with your life? If this man can, with everything he's dealt with, I really wonder, what's holding you back? So that's kind of my monologue. I just felt it was important to set up this show like that. So I know I've go on and I'm talking now. I'm going to tag you back in, Rick, and just let you go. Let's talk about forgiveness. You want to, it's up to you whether you want to start with you asking for forgiveness or giving others forgiveness.
um, it's kind of both ways. There's a component in my life where my wife forgave me for some things that I had done, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, as we share my story. And then again, there's the part where I had to learn to forgive somebody else, and so it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah. So let's talk about let's start with your wife and
Okay.
you doing things in which you had to ask for forgiveness and how that whole thing worked out too, because you had to absolutely have some courage to ask for it. And
Right.
it could have I know how it what the result was of asking for your forgiveness, but um it could have very easily went the other way.
Absolutely. Um, my wife and I've been married now for nearly 40 years, and She was the kind of woman that, is an answer to my prayer. In fact, many, many years ago, when I was seeking out a wife, I was challenged to just ask God for exactly what you want in a woman. And so I did. And it was very, very descriptive. I prayed for a 5'1" to 5'2" female with weight about 103 to 110 pounds, dark complexion, long black hair, just stunning to look at, very classy and elegant. And I prayed for a lot of other things that were more in the lines of our private our private relationships. And within 2 weeks, she showed up. She showed up uh, at the church that I was attending, and she was there on a blind date to meet me. Now, when I made that prayer, it was very physical in nature, very carnal minded, if you will. But at the end of that prayer, I said something that I had no idea what it meant or how it would play out over the rest of my life. But I ended the prayer with, but most importantly, Father, I pray that she will help me become the man of God you want me to be. Amen. So now I fast forward to, we start having children and we get married within 6 months because when you make a prayer like that and the woman comes walking into your life with fits the exact description of what you asked for, it's hard to deny where that came from. And so we started our life together. 6 months in, we got married. We started having children. And one of the things that became very bothersome and worrisome to me was that I was getting married with the anticipation that that would help me overcome some of my sexual addiction that I had developed early on in my teens and into my early 20s. And when I got married, it was gone for a while, but then that stuff started just creeping back into my life. And my wife detected it, and she realized it, and so we struggled for quite a while in our first part of our marriage. So let me fast forward to 10 years to where it really, really um, changed everything. So 10 years into marriage, and all of the things that I had already caused her, the betrayals and the porn addiction, she came to me and she says, "I hate you, I hate God, I hate the church, I quit." And she was done. She was walking out the door with two of my boys, and the thought of having another man raise my children. They were like 6 and 7 at the time, and not having my answered prayer. I thought, if there's a hell, there's a special place for me in it because here's my answered prayer, and I've just completely crushed her spirit, crushed her heart, and now she's at a place where I can understand her hating me. But what I couldn't understand, and I took a lot of responsibility for, is that I had caused this beautiful woman in my life to hate God, and that that hurt. That hurt me deeply because I knew it was all it was all me. It was completely my responsibility, and it was completely my actions that have caused her to hurt so much. So we ended up getting in touch with some people that could help me. In fact, it was ironic. It was a book that I received from my mom, and the name of the book, if I can remember it right, is "How to Understand the Mind of a Woman," and it was by a man named Kenneth Nair. And I read that book from cover to cover, uh, probably 2 or 3 times, and the light bulb was coming on. I mean, I was just having one epiphany after another, one paradigm shift. It just kept coming back, saying, "No wonder, no wonder." So I decided I need to get a hold of this guy. So I called him and asked him if he could mentor me, and he said, "Absolutely, I can mentor you." He said, "I run a program every week on Wednesdays in Phoenix, Arizona, And if you can make it for the next 3 years, I will be glad to mentor you. And I had just been hired on by the fire department with Anaheim, and I was a rookie. And I'm thinking to myself, well, there's no way I could bug out of my rookie year one Wednesday every week. So I said, there's no way I can do it right now. On probation. And so he said, well, I do have a guy that just finished our program and he lives in your area. Maybe you can contact him. So we did. I contacted him, and together for the next 3.5 years, he and his wife mentored my wife and I through this addictive cycle to try to break that chain. And through that mentorship, he asked me, if you ever feel like the Holy Spirit is pricking your heart, Rick, to tell the truth about what you've been through, I want you to promise me that you'll do that. And at the time, I thought, yeah, that's no big deal. No problem, because there's no way I'm going to be telling my wife what I've been doing. Uh, so I agreed. I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And we ended up going through this mentorship, and later in the in our relationship, we'd been praying for this for another child, and we were specifically praying for a little girl. And so here we've been praying for her, and my wife is now pregnant with our daughter, and she comes to me and says, I know we've been working through a lot of our issues together, but there's an element to it that I think we need to address. She asked me to confess what I had done to her, where I'd been, not necessarily the details of it, but how far my addiction had led me. And I just thought to myself, there is no way I can tell her where I've been with my addiction. From her understanding, it was pretty much just porn. It was just videos and things like she saw maybe magazines or a video here. That's where she thought my porn had gone, or my addiction had gone. And I begged her, please don't let me have to reveal this to you. Let's just know that my path is on a good track now, and I'm not planning on ever going back to what I would do, what I was doing. And she said, we need to rebuild this marriage. And the only way I know how to rebuild it is we have to rebuild it on the foundation of truth. If I'm ever to trust you again, I need to know the truth, and you need to have the courage to express that truth. And so my mentor's voice just kept popping through my head. If you ever feel the Holy Spirit prick your heart, Rick, go ahead and let her rip. And I thought, well, this must be it. So I took a big deep breath, scared as I could be, just had so much fear running through my body. I was trembling because I knew what I was about to tell her. Uh, it could not only end our relationship, but it could end the fact that I've got this little baby on the way uh, that I may never get to know. So with a big deep breath, I said, "All right, here's where I've been." And I explained to her that my addiction had not just led me through porn, but it also had led me into human trafficking with prostitution, strip clubs, and multiple affairs and things like that. And to my surprise, she handled it very well. And the next morning, I got up, I went into work. We lived about an hour away, so I drove into Anaheim. And that evening, I called my wife up and asked her, see how she was doing and check in with her. And she wasn't doing too well. In fact, she was having a real tough time. And she ended up telling me, she said, after hearing everything you told me last night, uh, I don't think I can stay married to you any longer. I had no idea that your addiction had gotten that far out of control. He says, not only do I not want to stay married, I don't think that I can carry your child. And so for me, I'm thinking, holy crap. I told my renter, I told him, just let this ride, don't go down this road. So now I'm looking at not only losing my wife, but I'm also losing the contemplating the loss of the baby that we'd been praying for. And so I immediately got off the phone with my wife and I called my mentor, and I proceeded to have some words with him. I was very, very angry, uh, very upset at the fact that I trusted him to tell my wife something that I knew in my heart that I probably should have never even mentioned. And my mentor let me vent. He let me scream. He let me yell. He let me throw out a bunch of four-letter words. And, you know, he just let me get it off my chest. And when it was all said and done, he said these words to me. And these words have stuck with me uh, ever since. He said, Rick, if you think God is taking you down this path with all you've been through with you and your wife, only to drop you off at the doorstep of an abortion clinic, you don't know my God. And he was right. I didn't know his God. I knew the God of religion, but I didn't know the God he served and the God that was intimately involved one on one in a relationship. And he said, listen, just sit back and let the Spirit soften her heart. She has to process all this information you just dumped on her last night. So let her process that. And when it's all said and done, you're going to be real surprised. You're going to know who God really is because her heart's going to soften. You watch. And I said, okay, I'll do that. I mean, what other choice did I have? I mean, at this point, it's she's leaving anyway, so I might as well just sit back and just give her space and not try to convince her and not try to change her mind and just let her simmer and let her uh, kind of get this thing processed in her own way. So it took about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before. I mean, she was softening. I could see her heart softening, and I didn't try to engage with her. I didn't try to defend myself. I didn't try to convince her that she needed to change and convince her that, to stay married to me. I basically just stepped back and I told her, I said, I will support you in whatever decision you make, and I will do my best to be the husband and the father that I can be from here on out. And if you choose that marriage and is not an option, I will accept that. And as time went on, she ended up saying, I think we can make this happen. I think I'm over it. I think I understand it now, and um, she forgave me. She completely forgave me, and we ended up having a little girl, and we named her Victoria as a symbol and a sign and a representation of the victory that we were about to experience in our marriage. So now I've got this 23-year-old daughter who runs around here, and we call her Victoria. And every time I see her, I get to be reminded of the victory that we had through my wife's forgiving heart to a man that had brutally just smashed her heart up against the rocks of adultery and, and sexual addiction. Anyway, I wish I could say the next 10 years were easy, but my wife had to deal with a lot of issues going on with that. And for the next 10 years, I did everything I could to earn her respect back, earn the right to be her husband and be respected by her, and walk through that for 10 years. So here I am now, I'm married 20 years, and I'm just now starting to experience this incredible relationship with my wife in a way it is so powerful and so miraculous at the same time. that when I explain it to people, they have a tough time understanding the connection that she and I had. And if you don't mind, I'll just go into a couple little stories about how deeply connected we really were.
Please
Um,
do.
so I don't remember the exact year now, but I had already started a ministry that was dealing with sexual addiction and helping men overcome that, walking them through their own struggles. We were also involved with, couples who were dealing with that same issue, helping them go through. And we did that for about 5 years. And on the way to work every morning, I would pass this billboard sign on the freeway, and it was a billboard announcing that the LA Porn Convention was going to be in town. And when I drove by that, I heard this voice say, "I want you to go there." And I thought to myself, "There's no way I'm going there. I'm a I'm a sex addict, man. I don't belong to no porn convention." And so I just didn't even think anything of it. I didn't even know where the thought came from. And then this went on for about a week. Every day I passed that sign, I heard that thought or heard that voice come up in my head and it say, "I want you to go there. I have someone I want you to meet." That's how vivid that was every time I drove through. I got someone there I want you to meet. And I didn't want to go. So after about a week or two of doing this and saying no, I started to feel this disconnect from God. And I was something that I was so accustomed to and experiencing it in a way that it just made me feel alive. And then all of a sudden, here I am. I'm feeling like empty. I'm feeling like he's not there. And I was in prayer and meditation one morning, and I just asked. I said, "I feel like you're not with me. What's happened?" And all I heard was, "You're not being obedient to what I need you to do." And I said, and these are conversations I have in my head. I'm going, "Are you kidding me? You want me to go to a porn convention? There's no way. I mean, what am I going to do there? What am I going to say?" He says, "It's not up to you to do or say anything. Just go there, and I have someone there for you to meet." So it was a holiday of some sort, as I recall, and I had my daughter with me, so I was watching her while my wife was at work. And I remember saying, I thought I had a good enough excuse. I says, "Well, if you really want me to go there, you're going to have to figure out some way for me to take care of Victoria because I'm watching her, and I have no one to." And it was that day. That porn convention was that day, so it was like, "All right, well, find me someone to watch my daughter, and I'll do it." And as soon as those words went through my head, I got a phone call, and it was a good buddy of mine, Jaime. And Jaime says, "Hey, the girls are off school today, and I was wondering if you'd allow Victoria to come out with us. We're going to head over to this pizza place, and we're going to play games and stuff like that." And I said, "Well, yeah, sure." I said, "What time you think?" He goes, "Like right now." And I go, "What do you mean right now?" I go, "Where are you?" He goes, "I'm in your driveway." I go, "You got to be kidding me." He says, "No, I'm ready to go right now." And I said, "Okay, Lord, I get it. I get it." So now I am shaking. I am literally trembling in fear that I just made a deal with God that said, "Hey, if you can find someone to watch my daughter, then I'm all in. I'll go to that porn convention." And so I packed my daughter up, and she went off with Jaime and the girls. And there I was by myself, wondering, what am I getting myself into? And so here I am leaving Norco, California, and driving all the way into LA to go to a porn convention because I think God is telling me to go meet someone. So I get down there, and one of the things that I was asked to do is just read your Bible. because I was worried, okay, am I supposed to be meet? Am I supposed to hand out something to people? Am I supposed to go do something specifically? And all he said was, just read your Bible. I said, all right, I can do that. So I went off kind of in the corner somewhere out of the main public viewing. And I just started reading my Bible thinking, yeah, no one's going to find me over here. So I'm sitting there and reading, and this lady comes up to me and she says, do you know where you are? And I said, yeah. She goes, well, what are you doing? I said, I'm just reading my Bible. And she says, well, why are you here reading your Bible? And I just kind of laughed a little bit. I said, well, you're not going to believe it. I said, but I believe that I'm instructed to be here for some reason. There's someone that uh, God wants me to meet. And I just asked her, I said, are you the one I'm supposed to meet? And she goes, oh, no, no, no. She says, I'm not here as a participant in this venue. She says, I'm here covering it. And I didn't even think anything of it. And I thought, okay, whatever. And she went off and, oh, before she left, she says, well, if you're here uh, as a result of God telling you to be here, why don't you go over there where everybody can see you instead of being off on the side here? And I said, okay, that might be a plan. So I did. I went out there right in the middle where everybody was checking in, and I was completely exposed. I mean, I was completely exposed as this man sitting there reading his Bible in the middle of a porn convention. And I had girls coming up and doing some of the illicit things that they might want to try to do, and I just buried my head in my scripture and just kept reading. And I'd look up every now and again and kind of nod my head at them, and you know hoping they'd go away. And the next thing I know, this man comes up to me, and he tries to get me to engage with him to go upstairs where the main events were happening, and we were going to pass out flyers and stuff. And I said, no, man. I said, that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here just to read my Bible, and there's someone here I'm supposed to meet. He says, well, can we pray? I said, sure, we can pray. So we're praying, and it's custom with me. I pray with my eyes closed and my head bowed. And this old boy was praying, and next thing I know, I hear, they're coming. And I'm thinking, who's coming? And I look up and I see this group of people coming at us. And then this guy just takes off. He just leaves. Thinking, holy cow. And as they got closer, uh, it was the lady that I'd seen earlier. And she comes up to me and she says, you remember me? And I said, I sure do. And she says, well, my name is Lisa Ling, and I'm with the Oprah Winfrey Show. Do you mind if I do an interview with you? And without even thinking, I said, of course, let's go. And so she started doing an interview with me in the middle of a porn convention. And you know how sometimes you can hear the questions, and the questions are more geared towards, uh, are you condemning of these people? I mean, is this something, are you here reading your Bible as a way of saying you condemn and judge these folks? These people say, a lot of these women say that this is their true self and they get freedom from this, and this is what empowers them as women. What do you say? And I just said, no, there's no way I'm here to criticize, judge, or condemn anybody. I said, if I did that, I'd be just condemning myself. I said, there's nothing that I can say in judgment of any one of these people participating. And so she says, well, people say that this is how they find their true identity. What do you say? It just so happened that that morning I was in the scripture reading about the woman at the well, and she was an outcast of society, and uh, had lived with five different men, and uh, her own people rejected her. And so she was up at the well in the middle of the afternoon in the heat of the day, drawing water for the day's activities. And she did that because in the morning hour, when all the regular women were up there, they would make fun of her and ridicule her and judge her. And so she was up there by herself, and she has this encounter with Jesus. And so Jesus just starts to express to her what true living water is. And so I got an opportunity for about 10 minutes to just talk about the living water that comes through knowing who Jesus Christ is. And after it was all said and done, Lisa goes away and she comes back and asks me if I'd sign a waiver. And sure enough, I signed the waiver. And I asked her, I said, look, I said, I hope that this doesn't come across in after editing things out, that like I'm some sort of weird, whacked out Christian, because that's not my intention at all. Like I said, I was only here because I felt like God was telling me that um, I had someone that He wanted me to meet, and so I'm just trying to be obedient to what He asked me to do. And she said, "No way, Rick." She says, "There's no way that we would ever do that." She says, "I totally respect and honor what you were doing here today." I said, "Okay, cool." Now, the second problem I had was my wife doesn't know I'm here, and I and I'm being interviewed uh, by Lisa Ling, and she says it's for the Oprah Winfrey Show. And I thought, my goodness, I better let my wife know what's going on. So I immediately called my wife, and I said, "You're not going to believe where I am." And she says, "You're at the LA Porn Convention." And my jaw just dropped. I go, "Was that a live interview? Holy cow." She says, "No." I said, "Well, how'd you know I was here? This is before you had, this is before tracking on our phones and things like that. And how do you know I'm here?" And she says, "Well, there was this billboard every time I drove by on the freeway on the way to work. There was this billboard that said LA Porn Convention and gave the dates." And she said, "Every day I went by that on my way to work, I heard this voice says, um, Rick's going there, but don't worry, he's going there for me." I said, "Are you kidding?" I said, "You heard God tell you that I was going to a porn convention, but I was going there for him?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Man, that's amazing. I can't believe it." I'm thinking, I'm getting excited, thinking, my wife and I are on the same page, man. And then she pops out with this. She says, "But I'm, I'm offended." I said, "At what?" "That you didn't have the courage to tell me that that's what you were going to be doing today." And I said, "Kel, after all we've been through, I just figured that the last thing I needed to tell you was that God was telling me to go to a porn convention, because there's no way that in my mind that you would ever believe me." And she says, "That's why I'm offended." She said, "You don't think God talks to me either, huh?" And I said, I apologize. I didn't realize that your relationship with him was like mine. I thought I was a whack job. I really did. I thought I was crazy." And I said, "Well, what do you think this means?" And she says, "I really think that this was to prove to you and to me both that God is working in our lives in a very powerful way, but you have to trust Him enough to be able to be honest with me in what you're doing." And I said, "Okay, from here on out, you and I are going to be on the same page. I'm going to let you know everything that I hear God telling me, and vice versa." And so we made an agreement that day that this was probably going to be something more of a line of learning how to accept who God really was. And it had nothing to do with Oprah Winfrey or the Lisa Ling interview. And as things would have it, my entire segment was cut away from the episode that she did with Oprah Winfrey. So I wasn't even on the interviews. um, but it did teach me something that day, that God is so much bigger than who I thought He was, as confined in a religious environment, that He actually does work with us and can guide us and can instruct us and can share with us. And He's never condemning and He's never judgmental over us. He just wants this loving relationship if we're open to it. And so we started that as our new journey, is that we were just going to start listening to God, and finding out where it takes us. So now fast forward a few years, and her and I are same kind of a situation, but this time it's a morning meditation, and I'm I'm hearing God say, I just had this in depth, this kind of like vision almost of me crawling out of this pit. And this pit, every time I made a an attempt to get out of it, I put my hand in a handhold. These terrible creatures were trying to throw me back into the pit. And I finally make it out. And so Kelly and I are making it out. We're climbing out of this pit, and we get up to the top, and I finally get out, and I survey the land, and everything is easy. Everything is it's there's nothing there. I mean, it's like there's no more struggle. There's no more someone trying to pull me back into the pit. And I turn back around, and I see my wife peering out of the pit, but she's peering out like this. All I could see is her eyes. And I tell her, I said, it's safe to come out. So she comes out. Now this was just like a morning meditation that I was going through, and I was completely coherent through it all. And then I hear these words: go tell Kelly what you just saw. And I'm thinking, man, it's 5 in the morning, man. I'm getting ready to go to work. She's not going to want me to go wake her up to tell her this. Go tell her what you just saw. So I did. I went in there and I told her what I saw, and I woke her up, and I explained to her everything that I was just experiencing, and she starts crying. I go, baby, what's going on? What's the matter? And she says, Rick, that was my dream last night. And I just went, whoa. I said, okay, this is starting to get a little bit scary now. God is just connected with you and I in a way that I don't know how many people he's done that with. I'm sure there's countless of people, but not coming out of my religious background. This was stuff, this would have been voodoo in my religious culture. So I just pushed it aside, and I thought, okay, you and I are, I don't know what we're planning, what God's got planned for us, but better hang on when we got conversations like this going on. So now, a few more months goes by, and uh, I'm in a morning meditation again, and this time I hear, you're going to suffer tragedy at the hands of one of your children. And to me, that meant one of my kids were going to be hurt. And so I went and I talked to Kelly about it. I said, "Look, this something came up, and I'm kind of struggling with it." Um, and at the time, I I didn't know what to think of it. And when I asked my wife about it, she said, "I've been having a lot of dreams and a lot of insight." And she says, "I'm being told that Michael's going to die." And I just like, oh my God, this can't be happening to us. There's no way. And anyway, we just kind of brushed it off for a bit, and I started making arrangements, thinking to myself, well, if this is how it's going to go, God, uh, you're going to have to walk us through it, because there is no way I can handle losing one of my children, especially my firstborn son. I just like, this is not right. Uh, Suffering the loss of a child, and you telling us about it. So we just decided, well, if this is the case, we're going to do everything we can to pour into Michael. So for the next 3 years, my wife and I got to pour into Michael. Like, there's just, I mean, we just got to know who he was. We got to see him develop into a young man, and um, he was he was in an industry that was caused us some fear. He was in the medical cannabis industry, and we were fearful of his life, not because he had the wrong motives, but because, coming out of the fire service, and my wife being the nurse, we just knew that, there's some people out there that could easily want to just take his harvest and do him harm. So we were constantly focused on that and mindful of it. And I ended up finally having to tell him, I said, "Look, son, you're living in the back house on our property, and if something were to ever go down, you could put me at risk for losing my career and my pension." And he says, I thought about that, Dad. And he says, I've been looking for a place to go so I can move out. And I said, well, when you get there, just let me know, and I'll do whatever I can to help you get there. And sure enough, he found a place and moved out just after his 23rd birthday. So he finds this place in Corona, apartment, and moves out. And within a month, he was murdered. And it just, there's some guilt there. Would that have happened if I hadn't shared with him what my concerns were? Would that have happened on my property? Would somebody have had the wherewithal and the courage to actually do something like that on my property? Or did I create this environment where my son was able to be isolated away from me and vulnerable? And so I dealt with that for quite some time. And even knowing that God had spoken to both me and my wife that this was going to happen, it was still a very difficult pill to swallow. And so I think my relationship with God started to kind of, not that I rejected or was angry with God. I got to a place where I don't want to hear you speak anymore. I don't want to know anything. I'd rather just something blindside me out of left field than hear you speak words to me anymore, because I don't think I could take it anymore. And so for the next 10 years, that's what we've been dealing with. And I ended up, right after that had happened, the brothers and sisters that worked at our department, they made arrangements. So all the different captains around started taking my shifts. So I had 4 months where I didn't have to go to work. My shifts were covered. And I finally get back to work, and I had just been elected to the union board just before Mike was killed. And so now I was starting a new era of my um, career as a board member. And right after I got on the board, spent that first year kind of getting my feel for how things were going and how things operated. And the next year, when I was eligible, I put my name in the hat to become the union president and was nominated to become the president of our local 289. And we ended up having to navigate some of the most difficult times in our organization's history. We had a fire chief that had come in from the outside, and no one's ever had a fire chief come from the outside in Anaheim. We've always promoted from within. And he started doing things that were not in accordance to what we felt were right for our members. And so I stood the gap and did whatever I could to protect our membership, and all the way up to a vote of no confidence on him. And we ended up running that through the international, and we had a vote of no confidence. And about the time that he finally left our department, uh, I figured, you know what, I'm going to step down. It's time for me to give the reins over to someone else. I did what I needed to do while I was in the position, and so I stepped down. I turned the reins over to uh, the next union president, Rob Lester, and Rob took it from there. And I just became a union board member for the last year of my time. And when it was all said and done, it was time for me to walk away. Well, that's about the time. That's probably about when COVID started hitting and Disneyland closed down. And because Disneyland is such an economic powerhouse, uh, and funded a good majority of our budget, our department was asked if they had anybody that they would you know recommend that would be up to taking an early retirement. And I raised my hand. I'll be the first one. I'll shoot. I'm ready to go. So I ended up getting an early retirement from Anaheim, and my wife and I purchased a house out here in Nashville, Tennessee, uh, along with our business partner Amanda, and we started running an Airbnb out of our house, out of the bottom half of the house. So we moved out here, and I'm thinking, okay, life's going to be so much better than it was in California. We're going to have, I'm going to finally get to be retired. I'm going to finally get to enjoy life. We're going to travel. We're going to run this Airbnb, and then we're going to take some of the capital and we're going to buy another Airbnb, and we're just going to get in the Airbnb business, and we'll have a place to go and all the destinations we most love. And 5 months into retirement, I fall and break my neck at C4 and C5. And it was like the nail in the coffin, you know what I mean? Like here I am 5 months into retirement, and now I'm paralyzed from the chest down. And through that process of being paralyzed, my union brothers and sisters started flying out to Nashville, Tennessee to be by my bedside. And they were with me every step of the way. So I had the support of my family, I had the support of my brotherhood, and they were coming out, helping around, getting the Airbnb up and running, making sure everything was the way it was supposed to be. Um, but I'm laid up and I can't do anything. And I had one goal while I was in the hospital, and that was to walk again. And it was through all that love and that support of our membership that motivated me and inspired me to not give up and to walk out of there. And against all the odds, they didn't know that I'd ever have use of my hands again, and they didn't know if I'd ever walk again. So against all odds, I went to work, and for 2.5 months, started to learn how to walk without feeling anything in my body. I couldn't my numb and still to this day, my lower half of my body is numb like it's under Novocaine as the nerves are still trying to grow back. But I got up, I walked out of that place, and then everybody went home, and I was left by myself at the house, just nothing to do but think about my condition. And my condition was getting worse and worse. I was drifting back into depression, discouragement, uh, not really having a lot of communication with God because, I told him, I said, look, I just don't want to hear from you anymore. I'm going to do my thing, but I really am not interested in hearing from you. And so I spent the next year in a pit, in a terrible pit. And my wife told me, she says, I feel like you're giving up. And we've been through way too much for you to just give up on life now. She had to go back to work because I couldn't do anything to support a little extra cash around the house. The Airbnb I had to manage, but it was getting harder and harder for me to manage it. So I had to piece out the cleaning duties and all the other stuff. So I mean, the Airbnb was doing okay, but it wasn't taking in the money that we thought it would be that would allow us to be able to travel and do the things we wanted. So I started to feel sorry for myself, and we ended up getting involved with a group of real estate investors. And my wife believed that if we did this, it would help me to become it helped me to take my mind off of my condition, and I could use my construction background, I could use my fire service background, and I could be of value to these apartment syndicators uh, as an asset manager. And so we decided to join this, and I could tell I wasn't committed, and I could tell I wasn't going down the path that I needed to be on to make this make it work. And instead, I just kept feeling more and more sorry for myself, and the anger started coming out more and more. The bitterness, the resentment. Now I'm looking back at, you know, 10 years of Mike's death and processing some of the grief that I don't think I ever processed before. And I'm getting angry with the fact that, you know, this man took my son. That wasn't fair. I got angry at the fact of what it was doing to my children. My children were struggling at the fact that they lost their brother, especially my son lost his best friend. They were 18 months apart. They were joined at the hip. They did everything together. And now for the last 10 years, I've watched my son just go through hell trying to learn how to navigate life without his brother. My daughter was 13 at the time, and now I've watched her grow into a woman in this, you know, some of the most difficult times of a young lady's life. Uh, going turning into a woman, and the emotions she was dealing with, and watching her navigate and at the same time deal with her grief. It just broke my heart as a dad watching my children suffer that kind of pain. And I was just getting angrier and angrier, more bitter and more resentful. And we end up through that real estate investment group. It was a year ago this July that we went to one of the conferences. And in that conference, one of the keynote speakers gave an address, and he walked us through, at the end of it, he walked us through this exercise. And in this exercise, it was designed to find out, what is it that you think about yourself most often? Do you think of yourself negatively, or do you think of yourself positively? And what is it? If it's negative, what is it? What is that emotion that you think of the most and describe? And I knew what mine was immediately, man. I felt useless as a man. I had no value as a man. I didn't, you know, I was a truck company officer, um, union president, construction general contractor. So I'd always had this use of my body as my driving identity, if you will. And so here I am now without any of that. So I just felt useless. I felt like I was of no value. So he calls on the audience, says, "Is there anybody that would like to share the experience that they had as we walked through this exercise?" And my hand went up, and you know, I laugh now because I don't remember just saying, "Yeah, I'll go up there." It just like my hand went up, and I go, "Yeah, I guess I'll go up there." And he called on me, and I was in the back row. I don't know how he even saw me. So I'm in the back row. My hand goes up, and he calls me up. So I go up to the front, and Nick Santanastasso was the keynote speaker that night, that day. So he asked me to give him an idea of what was going on. I said, "Well, I feel like I'm useless. I feel like I have no value." And he asked me to explain that. I said, "Well, you know, give him the story." And now to give you a little insight into Nick, he has no legs and one arm. And he was born that way, one of 12 children born in 1996 with this disease, or with this infirmity. And 8 out of the 12 that have been born have died. And Nick is one of 4 that are still living. And he had to learn how to do everything Nick's way. And he looks me square in the eyes and he says, "Do you think I'm useless?" I said, "Well, of course not. You've got you've got a mission. You're up on stage. You're helping people transform their lives." He says, "Well, I was just curious because You've put a lot of value and made a lot of meaning out of your body's ability to function as it once did. But look at me. I've got no legs and one arm, and you say I'm useful, but you have your full body, and for some reason you feel like you have no value and you're useless as a man. And the light bulb went off. It was like, all right, duly noted. Here I am complaining to a man with no legs and one arm that I'm useless because my body's numb and I can't use my hands like I used to. I thought, what an incredible um, detrimental insight you have to your own body's function, Rick. I almost felt ashamed. Anyway, that kicked me off for a year of learning how to get my mindset back into a place where I could have that value again and I could be of service and I could be of use to other people. And as I was going through that journey, it dawned on me that 1 month before I broke my neck, I was in Colorado at my daughter's apartment, and we were going to help her get everything in order, um, get her place set up, maybe go buy some shelves and put up for her and things like that. But at the same time, we also found out that she was living next door to a stalker type guy, a guy that was making some very weird comments and uh, just made my daughter feel very, very uneasy. And I thought to myself, well, we're going to go out there. I just hope that this guy realizes that we're not the people he needs to mess with, because at that point, I knew where my heart was. I was already angry. I was already bitter. I was already in a place that, you say something wrong to me and I was going to take your head off. And first day goes by and everything was okay. Second day goes by, turns out guy comes out and decides to have a conversation with my wife. And then my wife having this conversation back, my son overhears it and comes out and he steps in and goes, "You don't know business talking to my mom. Why don't you go back in your house, mind your own business?" Well, the guy decided he was going to stay out there and keep chirping at us, keep chirping. So my wife yells down to me. I was out in the car, and she yells down to me to get up there right now. So I come flying up them stairs, and sure enough, that guy's in his little kind of smirky grin is explaining, you know, that we're a bunch of idiots, and that our daughter is not the person she says she is, and I just lost it. I lost it. And so I started to charge this guy, and he pulled out a 9mm from his pocket. And I thought, all right, so you're going to carry a concealed weapon out here, so you must be ready to use it. So I just charged him anyway, and he ran down the stairs, racked around, turned back down at the staircase, and points it back up to me. And I just sat there and looked at him, stared him in the eye, and said, "You don't got the balls to pull the trigger. You're a tough guy with the ladies, but let's see what you can do with a man twice your age. Pull the trigger, you punk." He didn't pull the trigger, but the emotional turmoil that it caused my family with all the screaming and the yelling and the fright in what was happening. Police were called out, and I actually got cited for enticing and inciting this with this guy, but those charges were all dropped, and he lost his ability to carry that weapon. So he lost his weapon that day. He brandished that weapon without a concealed carry permit, and they ended up booting him out of the apartment complex. I say all that because that was 1 month before I broke my neck. And from a guy who said, "I don't want to hear from God anymore," I think I heard from God. My anger had gotten out of control. my bitterness and my resentment that I had felt for all those years after Mike's death was finally coming to the surface in a way that was dangerous, and it was scary for my family. So when I broke my neck, it was like my way of understanding it was God was giving me a reset. He was allowing me to really sit back and think about where I've been for the last 10 years and what that has produced inside of me. And I started to realize that my unforgiving heart was at the root of this. And I started to remember my wife forgave me when I was unforgivable. And here I am holding on to this grudge for the man that murdered my son in a way that it's coming out in ways that I had no idea would surface. So I made a decision. All right, God, I now know where you're taking me. I get it. And I'm going to release all of that anger. I'm going to release all of that bitterness, all of that hostility, all of that resentment. And I'm going to forgive the man that murdered my son. So I just prayed to him, help me let it go. And it was gone. Once it was gone, it was like my life came back. It was like it was before my son died. And what I realized through it all was that this anger and this resentment that I was carrying deep within my heart, even though I thought I had forgiven him, I had a poison in me that I wasn't letting go of. And I needed to get rid of that poison. I've heard it described in a couple of different ways. You know, that emotional anger that we hold on to. Um, it's our punishment for not letting go and letting God take it. And I've heard it described as like a snake. You know, a snake will bite you and then the snake's gone. And in my case, the snake is gone for the rest of his life. Yet the poison is still running through my veins of being unforgiving toward him. And I felt so justified to hold on to that resentment. I felt justified. After all, he murdered my son. If I'm not justified to have anger towards him, if I'm not justified to have resentment for him, then who is? And I kept hearing these words that I learned through my journey in spiritual principles and learning about Jesus in my religious upbringing as he was hung on a cross to the people that his own people who judged him unfairly, his own people who spit in his face, his own people who had him whipped at the hands of Roman soldiers, his own people, who had him walk up the hill to Golgotha and be hung on a cross. His words to them was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And the light went off again. Here I am, 10 years on the other side of my son's murder, and I really haven't forgiven the man who knew not what he did. I hadn't really forgiven the man that had stolen so much away from me. And it wasn't until I got on my knees and asked God to help me forgive that the poison was finally released. So now the poison's gone, and I have a new mission, and I have a new purpose in life. My new mission and my new purpose in life is to help other people achieve their own freedom, whatever that is, whether that's forgiving, whether that's, forgiving themselves, forgiving others, whether that's coming to grips with their own mistakes that they've made, whatever it is. My new mission in life is to be able to empower people to achieve the freedom by discovering the courage to conquer anything life throws at them. And the way I did that was by maximizing the strength that's within me, my internal strength, and then taking that resilience of my life and embracing it rather than running from it. Just embrace resiliency and then navigate any adversity from here on out with purpose, passion, and power to achieve ultimate freedom. That's my new marching orders. That's my new mission in life. And it all began with the decision to finally forgive the unforgivable. So my question to people nowadays is, what are you holding on to? What snake do you got to let go of? Because until you let go of the poison that the snake bit you with, your life will easily spin out of control with addiction. Your life will easily spin out of control with failed relationships, failed marriages, family destruction. I mean, the list goes on and on and on at what we harbor in our heart, we then reflect into life. And then we see that reflection back in on ourselves and we validate that this is who we are. And I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to validate my own resentment. So now I choose to just forgive. I forgive everybody of anything and everything. I don't hold any grudges towards a soul anymore, not even the man that murdered my son. So here's the question I have to our audience today. What are you willing to let go so that you can have the life of your dreams, so that you can have the life that is meant for you and have it meaningful so that you can become the man of God he wants you to be, or the man of the woman of God that he wants you to be. Because let's face it, life is challenging. Life is unpredictable. We can't control it. We can't control what other people say. We can't control what other people think, and we can't control what other people do. But we can control how we react or respond to it. We have 100% control over our decisions, our choices. And those decisions and choices will come with consequences. Those consequences we can't control. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are suffering consequences from choices they made while being justified to make those choices. We've got relationships, marriages that are breaking up for some of the most insignificant reasons. We've got people not willing to put each other's best interest at heart and forgive the unforgivable. And I'm not saying that this is in every case, but in my case, my wife was justified to leave me. She was justified by the people in our circles that, no matter how hard you try to work it out, they would have completely understood, and so would I, if she would have just given up on me and said, "No, I don't want no part to do with you. You're a bum. You're an idiot. You're an addict." And she didn't. She chose to have the heart of God. She forgave me. And if she could forgive me for doing what I did to her, I could learn to forgive in that way too. And so that day, I forgave a man I didn't know, but I did know he took something very special away from me and my family. And since then, my life has been so much simpler. It's been so much more refreshing. Uh, I had a friend of mine. I walked into his office the other day, and he says, "Man," he says, "you floated in here. What's going on?" That's what happens when you let go of the baggage of an unforgiving heart. So that's been my journey, man. That's my life in a nutshell. And the last 10 years is where I have finally come to understand its purpose and its meaning.
Rick, I gotta tell you, I was enjoying not talking. I was enjoying just going for the ride with you. And that was, I mean, so powerful. Um, Goosebumps. I mean, I had goosebumps. Listen to this. Powerful stuff. So you talked about your new mission. I know you just were in Florida last week working on that. Would you
Right?
mind kind of discussing that and really
Sure.
what's next for you? I mean, we talked a lot about what's happened in the past, but I really want to touch on the future of you.
Okay. Yeah. So about 2 months ago, uh, that gentleman that I spoke of, Nick Santonastasso, who was the keynote speaker at that event that I attended. Um, once I was once that was done, I spent that next year kind of just getting my head right, and then all of a sudden, his Instagram feed started popping up in my IG, and I started noticing that he was helping people develop their passion to speak publicly as a transformational um, speaker. And I didn't even know there was such a thing. I just thought public speaking was public speaking, but it's public speaking with the purpose of transforming lives, not just being not regurgitating or just disseminating information. It's information, it's informative, but that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to truly transform lives. And it reminds me of a spiritual principle that's taught in the Bible that says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so that transformation requires a renewing of our minds. And too often is the case where we miss that in our religious endeavors. We're so caught up into serving God in a certain way, with certain doctrine, with drawing lines of of division because they're doing it wrong or they're doing it wrong and we're the only ones that got it right. And so it's more of an informative type of delivery, whereas transformation begins with the mind, renewing the mind so that you can transform. And because he said it that way, it's about transformation. He caught my attention. So I started plugging into it a little bit more. And then he offered a 5-day course online. And if anybody, I'm telling you, if any of your listeners want to get insightful, transformational uh, information from a guy that's a master at it, he offers this 5-day course. And there's a lot more into it than just speaking and learning to speak. He goes into the psychology of transformation, and it was powerful. So I enrolled in that, and it was free. But he also offered another side of it. He said, if for $47, you could be a VIP. And so I jumped on 47 bucks and became a VIP, and that offered me 1 hour with all the other people that spent the VIP cost. So we all got 1 hour with Nick, and then it went to the general admission. So for 2 hours, for 5 days, we got to be in proximity with Nick and just learning from him and just like I say, just learning at the feet of Baby Yoda is what it was. And he gave us a 6th day for free for all of us who were VIPs. So 6th day was an added benefit of him just over delivering his passion to help people transform their lives so that they don't have to get stuck being a victim anymore. No matter what you're no matter what you think you're justified to be a victim in, um, he takes it all away and allows you to see that life is not about being victimized. Life is about overcoming and being victorious. And so after spending those 6 days with him, he offered a speaker secret course with him for 2 days in Florida. And in that 2-day process, you develop your own story in a way that can be transformative in the lives of others. And so I jumped on that one. And the value I received from that is the foundation for where I'm headed now. And where I'm headed now is, like I said, just to empower people to discover the courage to conquer their own demons and maximize their own internal strengths and embrace resilience rather than run from it, and then learn to navigate any adversity with purpose, passion, and power. And when you can do that, you have unleashed unlimited potential for success and fulfillment in life. And that is now my new journey, is with Nick and what he's been able to help me overcome and the mentorship he's been able to provide for me, is that moving forward here in retirement, um, I will be speaking at any event, any organization that wants to learn more about how to overcome life's obstacles and embrace your story in such a way that you give people the permission to unleash the potential that's within them. That's true transformation. So that's where my new journey's headed, as a life and career transformational coach. So, uh, I hope that before we end this, that it gives your audience an opportunity to be able to reach out to me. And I've got a free gift for them if they will. And start this journey with them and help them achieve the successes that only uh, a forgiving heart can achieve. That's where I am today.
I love it, Rick. I love it so much. Uh, would you let our audience know how they can get a hold of you?
Sure. Best way to get a hold of me is through my email. And my email address is rkconsulting. So that's rkconsulting292 @gmail.com. You can follow me at Rick Cheatham on Facebook or Ricky C AFD. That's Ricky C AFD on Instagram. And come on the journey with me, man. It's going to be a ride. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see who God puts in my circle to help navigate their issues and break free from the bondage that keeps us anesthetized to our stinking addictions, whether that be drugs, alcohol, you name it. In my case, sexual addiction. And then just provide a safe environment for people to truly learn how to be fulfilled in life.
Powerful, powerful, powerful stuff. I mean, this was absolutely worth the wait, my friend. 100%.
I'm so thankful and appreciative for the opportunity. And especially, I'm very appreciative to my buddy James Gearing, who he was the first person I called because I know where his heart is and what his purpose is. And when I shared my story with him, uh, he said, "I've got a guy that I want you to speak to," and that was you.
Yeah,
So I'm thankful for that mutual connection that we have with James and for everything that he's doing and everything that you're doing uh, to help, those out there who are suffering, man. We got a lot of people in pain and they're suffering. And my life is now dedicated to overcoming that, just like it is within your life and within James. He's helping everybody. We're here to help people overcome and become the people that we were meant to be in this life. So thank you.
absolutely. Well, on that note, let's get out of here. This is the end of this conversation, but there's going to be more. There's going to be more. So I'm not done with you yet. We got some work to do. And it
We
is,
do.
like you said, it's funny how things work. Um, but I'm thankful for them. And I think you and I are both just going on a ride
Right.
and not knowing where it's going, but we're going for the ride.
Exactly. Just hanging on, man. Just say, okay, let's see where it takes us.
That's right. So I'll get out of here. He's Rick and I'm Jim. And thanks to everybody for listening or watching. And I hope this you got out of this the same that I got out of this episode. Just powerful, powerful stuff. Um, and again, if Rick can forgive that individual and also ask for forgiveness, like you could tell how it has impacted him in a positive way by doing that. What are you holding on to and why? So, all right. Thanks again, Rick.
Thank you. And thank you to your audience. I appreciate and love you all. Thanks.